Hello, brilliant and embodied souls. My name is Kim. Welcome back to my channel. It is hot here. It is dusk, but dusk is coming just a wee bit earlier. The heat is dissipating at night ever so much more. I can feel the whispers of fall in the air and notice the plants and the trees around me preparing themselves for the next season to come. I'm feeling all of this and wanting to propose a fun, playful tag for all of us to engage in. The tag is 4 seasons, 8 decks. I would like to explore with you the 4 seasons and 8 decks in my collection that truly represent my relationship with those seasons, and highlight decks that just really speak to that seasonal resonance. So many of us here seem to work with our decks seasonally. And that makes perfect sense because we are creatures who live in an environment, and that environment has a big impact on how we think and feel, what kinds of activities we're engaged in, what we're eating. Seasonality is a huge part of being a living being. And I love embracing that. It's not just about, what we wear and eat and the environment, right? It is also about how we conduct our lives and extending that idea of seasons, into our internal landscape as much as our external landscape, right? Many of us also experience seasons within ourselves. When are we feeling springtime fresh? And then, when are we feeling wintertime rest and reflection, right? So there's the literal seasons, which is part of this tag, right? The decks that really, really resonate with me and hopefully with you around the 4 seasons. But that also extends into phases of life. So I would love to see your perfect pairs because that is what I have curated. I've put together 4 tarot decks and 4 oracle decks that really represent the energies and essences of the 4 seasons. So this is also a perfect pairing extravaganza if you want to join in. You could also do this tag with just 4 decks. I wanted to create a tag that is accessible to people with smaller collections. We don't have to have big collections in order to do tarot tube content. So this is also an invitation to anybody who just wants to dip their toes into sharing their tarot impressions, what decks really resonate with them throughout the 4 seasons, and come on board the tarot tube train. So I'm going to flip us around and we're going to look at 8 decks for the 4 seasons, and I will see you in just a moment. Okay, we are back and ready to check out the seasonal decks that really, really resonate with me. Seasonality is external as well as internal. So I look forward to sharing why each of these decks really supports both external and internal seasonality. What I've realized in the curation of this deck list is that these are all mass market decks, which is very exciting to me. I have plenty of independently produced decks in my collection. However, when I can highlight decks that are readily available and affordable, that really, really delights me. I want to be somebody who is showcasing those types of decks on my channel, as well as the independently produced ones. So that delighted me to no end. let's talk about the decks, and let's start with spring. So I will be sharing the tarot deck first, and then bringing in the accompanying oracle to show a perfect seasonal pair. To kick us off, I have the Unfolding Path Tarot. This is so pastel. It has all of these beautiful watercolor images. There's a lot of thought and attention put into this deck to capture the RWS tradition of tarot. This is a very out-of-the-box RWS deck, making it a fast reader, an easy reader. It is so chatty. This deck loves to read for others. It loves to read for me. It has a vivaciousness about it, but it's still like subtle. It's not like super energetic. There is a serenity and peace to this deck because of the color palette, because of the watercolor images and illustrations. So it's not a boom kind of deck, which feels very spring to me. Spring is very much about budding and blossoming, that slow waking up from the slumber of winter. So this deck has that slow waking up, but as I said, it also has a lot of enthusiasm. There's a lot of vivaciousness within this deck, but it's not over the top. There's also something about this deck that still says, spring semester to me. I do think of the spring as a time of the year where a lot of school is still happening, right? A lot of hard work is taking place. So we do have these figures who are wearing blazers and are wearing more formal attire. We are still keeping it together in our lives during spring, right? We haven't transitioned into the playfulness and exuberance of summer. There's still a lot to be done in the spring. I grew up on a farm, and so spring was very much about planting and sowing your seeds, right? You had to keep it together to have all of that happen. So there is a professional element to this deck. The people feel very modern, contemporary, but professionals, right? People that you would see walking around a city who are trying to live a modern urban life. If I haven't already said it, this deck has so much diversity, racial diversity, age diversity, body, gender, sexuality. It is just a fantastic deck to read for others with. The type of readings that it gives is very clear, concise, because it is a RWS based deck. It just simply and profoundly gives messages. The messages are just so quick and fast, and I really enjoy this deck for many of those reasons. Finally, there is some spaciousness in this deck because of the white borders. There's a little bit of wiggle room within the watercolor that makes it a really just fresh deck. There's a freshness about this energy. All right, excuse me, there's a fresh energy about this deck. Okay, so its pair is slightly unexpected, but it is a deck that also has big pastel energy, and that is the Visionary I Ching cards by Paul O'Brien. I love this deck for its sensual watercolor landscapes. These two decks have a really interesting conversation going on. The I Ching cards have this black border that really grounds the image, whereas the Unfolding Path has the white border. So you get this like pulled in feeling, right? The light is coming into the ground, and that ground is creating and fortifying new growth. I love the I Ching cards because they're very strategic and action oriented. I am going to pull in a little bit of astrology within this video. Aries season is very much about embarking on a new path, right? A new year begins, new energy is coming into play. It's very much about action and making things happen. This deck is very aligned with Aries energy, even though it appears soft and potentially gentle. Gosh, this deck is so great if you are trying to figure out a plan, develop a plan, execute a plan, which also feels very spring to me. Spring is all about planning. It's all about laying the groundwork for the year to come. So these two decks just really bring those types of messages into my life. There's also just this like really great play with the colors. I mean, and sometimes the color palette doesn't like totally work between the two decks. Like this is kind of a little muddied, but there are many instances like, ooh, look at that, you know, where the colors really work. I find that to be true more times than not. Because they are both watercolor based decks, they just really work well together. Here, let me do some of that just to even out the piles. Yeah, there's something really great about the watercolor action between these two decks. They feel like they are speaking a similar language. The other thing is, like, since these are so landscape oriented and abstract landscape at that, there's a beautiful interplay between the characters and the landscape. The Unfolding Path does not really have a lot of background. A lot of the cards are decontextualized and really focused in on the characters. So the Visionary I Ching cards provide more of a landscape to root these characters in order to tell a even more robust story. You know, this is a great example, right? Like conflict, the tower. Oh gosh, you know, I am really getting a strong color story combined with the keyword, combined with my knowledge of the tarot. This is doing a lot for me. So this is just a fantastic spring pairing that I adore and was surprised by. I did not think that these decks would go well together because of the difference in their borders, but they wowed me when I put them together to test them out for this video. I was just curious. I was like, these are both very springtime decks. Do they go together? Turns out they do. Okay, let's move on to summer. And I have the Light Seers Tarot, which is a bit of a foil to the Unfolding Path. I did intentionally pick this deck because, well, I do really associate it with summer. The color palette is so vibrant, But I've seen a lot of people, for example, Lisa Pepez has a fantastic video where she compares the Light Seers with the Unfolding Path. People compare these two decks because there is a modern similarity between them. There is a sensibility, a diversity sensibility, a inclusive sensibility about both of those decks, but they are different. And this seasonal discussion helped me articulate some of that difference, actually. The Light Seers is so much more hippie, bohemian. It is incredibly playful. Even the more challenging cards have a theatric and over-the-top quality to them that distance you from the pain and the sorrow being conveyed in those particular aspects of the tarot structure. So this deck just really has a lightheartedness about it, even more than the Unfolding Path tarot, in my experience. It's also, just the clothing that people are wearing is much more casual and playful. It feels way more summer to me than the Unfolding Path. This deck is just so enthusiastic, where the Unfolding Path is a little bit more subdued, professional, like get the job done. This deck is, oh, no, let's play, let's have some fun, let's explore, let's be curious, let's be joyful and ecstatic. This deck loves to come with me to festivals during the summer. It also loves to read for people. It is incredibly chatty, much like the Unfolding Path. But again, what it wants to talk about is the joy, the fun, like how to make all of that a reality. It is just it has that summer feel of like, let's go have fun. It wants me and the people it reads for to connect with the beauty and wonder of life. It's so affirming. This is a very life affirming deck, and that feels so summer to me. And there's just such a warmth and a heat that comes off of this deck. So its perfect pair is, well, another deck by Chris Ann, The Sacred Creators. Oh, that's blurry. Oh dear. Well, we're moving on. I really love working on creative projects in the summer. I get a lot of energy in the summer, and I realize that's not everybody. So I am talking a little bit about like the internal reality of my summer season. It's when I conceive and bring to life my dreams and creative endeavors. The Sacred Creators Oracle is so well suited to help people who identify as creatives. It is just, again, very enthusiastic about supporting someone's dreams, making those dreams move from conception and ideation, into manifested goodness. This is the deck for creatives if you want a affordable, easily accessible deck. And because they are by the same creator, the color palette just vibes super, super well. The Sacred Creators is a ridiculously versatile deck. It goes really well with so many others. It's a type of oracle that can serve more purposes than just supporting creativity. When we just need an emotional pick-me-up, this deck delivers. It truly does. I guess another reason why I associate the sacred creators with summer is that there's just like a warmth that comes off of this deck. It just feels like laying in the sun, looking at flowers. There's a growth-oriented mindset within this deck. And summer is very much about growing, the fruits of our labors, developing and coming to bear. Yeah, it's very much about those themes. Yeah, so these are two perfect pairings, or two decks that make a perfect pair for summer, and some of the reasons why I really enjoy summer. Next up, we have fall, and I have chosen the Hush Tarot. Yeah, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. So many people speak about the liminal and autumnal vibes of this deck. There's a conversation of death and decay happening within this deck. So many of the characters are in disrepair. There's something about this deck that just alludes to endings and how do we navigate endings. Many people have spoken about this deck as a fae deck, which I absolutely understand and can see myself. For me, this deck is more about a loss of innocence, and this card is actually a really great example of that, right? We have these darling birds, and they have no idea what they have just done. They are too innocent, too young, too of nature to grasp that they've pulled the pin from a grenade. So for me, this deck is actually less about connecting with fae and more about connecting with lost innocence and that transition from the childhood glory and exuberance of summer into the harsh realities of fall, when we have to go back to school, when we really have to double down on our work. Again, growing up on a farm, the spring and fall are intense times. My dad would just be pulling almost all-nighters when I was a kid, right, to bring in the harvest. This deck speaks to that really challenging work that fall can sometimes bring, literal work, but also internal work. The changes that we have to deal with, the grief, the coming of age essence of this deck, just touch into those life phases where we have to say goodbye to who we were, the relationships that we had, certain worldviews, etc. This deck is a challenging deck because of those themes. It's also a challenging deck to read with because it goes its own way completely. This is not your bog standard RWS. It's not even really a Thoth deck. It really has its own symbolic language that you as the reader have to understand and spend time with. I don't read for others with this deck. It is a me deck. Because it asks me to slow down. It asks me to drop into more difficult and emotive themes. Which is not to say like I could see myself maybe reading for others with this deck, but to do so, I think I would have to spend even more time with it, and it would have to be the right kind of querent and specific themes to feel called to use this deck with others. So that is my fall tarot deck. I'm just gonna shuffle it, and now let's take a look at it alongside its perfect pair, which is another very liminal deck, the Earth and Bone Oracle. This deck can be challenging, just like the Hush Tarot. The themes are not light and fluffy. They are calling attention to some more challenging aspects of being human, right? Stepping into being unconventional, which is really interesting, right? Like the Three of Cups next to that idea, right? Like, how are we eroding our own authenticity and conforming to what others expect us to be in order to get their approval? Meanwhile, maybe we have to walk away to truly be unconventional. The interplay of these decks is so fantastic. There's a lot of symbolic continuity between the two decks, like lots of skulls within each, lots of serpents. Again, that death and decay is front and center here in the Earth and Bone. This is a dank deck. It is a underworld oriented deck. One could say it's a shadow work deck, although I feel it can be used for general readings, clarification. It's a very diverse deck, and that is really called for in the fall because we have a lot to grapple with during the fall. There's a lot of challenging themes that emerge for us. As I said, it is that time of saying goodbye and moving into something new and different, moving into the incubation period that is winter. Yeah, there's just a lot of like branches and brambles throughout both decks. A lot of animal energy in both of them. This deck has like many wolves and things like that. So you get actually like a nice diversity of animal energy. These two decks work really well color wise. They're not perfect in that regard. Right? Like these don't like absolutely sing to me, but the artwork is good enough together. It's really the themes that each of these is grappling with that feels incredibly resonant. But like you do get a lot of continuity between them. So I really feel like the artwork is solid, a solid pairing for the fall. And yeah, you can't go wrong with the themes of each of those decks. All right, bear with me as I put these away. Otherwise, I'm going to have a terrible mess on my hands. Okay, our last season and last pairing is for winter, and here I have the Tarot of the Sorceress. This is a pip-ish deck that does lean into a very witchy and Wheel of the Year themes. The majors echo some of the traditional Wheel of the Year, which I don't subscribe to. I tend to just ignore that and instead lean into my understanding of the tarot. This deck is really winter for me because of the black and white and gold color palette. For whatever reason, I just really reach for this deck in the winter time. There's something cozy about this deck, but also a touch austere because of the black and white and gold images. There's this nice juxtaposition of that restful, reflective energy contrasted with the severity and deadening that can find us in the winter, right? That exhaustion that can arise when we've been cold for so long. I have mentioned this on my channel and maybe, even earlier in this video, like I live in Northern California, so our winters are very mild, but I grew up in the Midwest, and this deck just really brings me into the essence of like those colder, harsher kinds of winters. But also the merriment, the coziness, but also the darkness. This deck gets into some of the mystery that can reveal itself during the winter. During the winter, I find myself being more contemplative, doing more intense journey work, really leaning into learning and reading and developing myself. This deck wants me to embrace those ideas because the pips are just so different. They lean into the senses, they lean into different magical material. There's a lot to be said about the intricacies of the structure of this particular deck. It goes its own way. It's got its own unique structure within the tarot structure that makes it a really intriguing deck to work with during the colder months. Yeah, and I feel so drawn to it, like especially around Yule, around the winter solstice. This deck just really calls to me. And its perfect pair is another rock pool deck. Yeah, the Wild Woman Oracle. I believe these decks came out around the same time, which seems really well thought out by Rockpool because they just sing together. They feel like they were made to go together. And this card is a fantastic example of like why this feels like a winter deck. We get all of these like super cozy scenes. There are difficult themes represented in this deck, like aloneness, but ultimately it is a incredibly empowering deck. It is a very feminine deck. It's based off of The Women Who Run with Wolves book by, I'm blanking on the author's name, but you all know the one, right? This deck taps into a lot of the myths and themes found within that book. And that's like a perfect book to read during the winter months, right? A book that drops you into fairy tales and narrative while also exploring, deep inner psychic and subconscious themes. Like these decks like do all of that together. And then there's just this like a little bit of coziness. Yeah, it's such a great pair. I really enjoy these decks together. Oh, sorry, I'm getting some glare as my light fades. But yeah, these decks are just so precious together. Yeah, and there's just like really awesome symbolic continuity between them. You know, like the branches over here and the branches here. I don't know, it's almost like these two characters could be related. Yeah, they really, really work together. I tend to use both of these decks for myself. I would maybe use this to read for others. This deck, I probably would not read for others so much, because it does go its own way quite a bit. And again, like some of the symbolic language and the structure do warrant more study. But oh my gosh, like look at this. We've got this like serpent, but it's almost like a, you know, could be almost like a sea serpent along with the siren. Oh my gosh, it's just so good. It's so good. Yeah. All right, I think I will leave it at that. I have loved sharing seasonal pairings with all of you. Please join in this tag. I would love to see your perfect pairs for seasonal decks. And, you know, you don't have to do pairings. You could just do 4 decks that really resonate with you for the seasons, and just share why, right? Why do these particular decks really work for you in terms of the 4 seasons and the seasons of life? Okay, I will see you all in the next video. Sending you so much love for now. Bye.